Hey guys, it's been a while. Well, I'm back today to talk to you guys all about a concept that I've been obsessing over for quite a while now, that I believe could be a real game changer for you in your ability to eliminate escapism and unleash your apex potential. You'll find this particularly interesting if you're sick and tired of trying to force yourself to level up in life only to get exhausted and relapse into poor behavior. And it's also going to be useful if you're tired of riding kind of like this motivational roller coaster where you periodically get super motivated to change your life and you start making those changes only to inevitably lose steam and fall off course. And the solution that I want to introduce you to is the idea of natural progress. What I've discovered through coaching guys for over a decade now is that unless you learn how to utilize the power of natural progress instead of frenzied or forced progress, then you're never going to be able to change your habits, get productive, or level up in life in a way that is truly sustainable and actually feels good. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to be talking about here the art of natural progress. All right, and this is something that, it's maybe you've heard bits and pieces of this from me before, but I want to present it to you in kind of a new way. So let's talk first about what the heck is forced progress. All right. Forced progress is when you're white knuckling changes in your life. Okay. You are riding on massive should energy, meaning like, you feel like, oh, I should do this thing. I should do that thing. I should do X, Y, Z. And you're constantly kind of trying to get yourself to flip and do it. And it's very difficult to maintain forced progress. So if we were to just kind of like look at the general graph that most people experience when they are practicing forced progress is, maybe they'll be able to make some progress here in the beginning, and then, they'll kind of hit a peak, a plateau, and then they'll just get exhausted. Oh, they'll fall into a dip until they can finally, rally some energy and get themselves the force again. And then boom, they pop back up only to fall off again. And they might have little struggles here and there where they're trying to push and maybe they'll get a little bump, but then it just kind of all peters out. And eventually you find yourself falling into a state where you're not really showing up as the person that you want to be. And typically this involves utilizing a lot of different kinds of escapism, whether it's porn, video games, Netflix, whatever. You're just not doing the kind of disciplines that are going to move you toward your goals. And generally this whole situation, it kind of sucks. You feel like self-development is this process of constantly trying to see how much pain you can take, right? You think success is an equation of how much can I get myself to suffer for my goals. And, I think this is a terrible way to live. But, I found myself trapped in this. I didn't really know what the alternative was. And, I'd felt something different before, but that was its own other issue. And so let's talk about what the heck that is. You're probably familiar with this yourself. It's what I would call frenzied progress. So what is frenzied progress? Well, this is when you are driven by a motivational high. So maybe you watch some David Goggins videos, or, you scroll in the self-development stuff, or maybe, someone lights a fire under your butt because either a good thing happens, they, fire you up, or they, maybe actually you face some kind of serious challenge in your life and you're like, okay, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to suck like this again. And so you get yourself all pumped up. And it's driven primarily by this big emotional spike. And this usually leads to big, intense action at first, but it quickly crashes. So, you have this big boom. I'm going to be awesome. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar and now I'm so hyped. I got my power move and everything. And I walked on hot coals. And then, after the event, you maybe coast on that for like a week or whatever. And then you fall back off. You see the same kind of thing with people with diets all the time. Someone gets really hyped on keto or, carnivore or whatever the heck it is, and they get all into it. And then, after a little bit, falls right back off. Okay. So what do we want? Well, like I said, we want natural progress. All right. Natural progress is the key. So what is natural progress? Well, first, it utilizes normal effort, okay, where this whole idea of forced progress, you got to kind of summon this superhuman will, right? It's like, I have to become this Superman, this incredibly powerful person. And it's like all about just pushing yourself to the limits. But like with natural progress, it's just normal, ordinary, plain human effort. You have to put some effort in, right? There has to be a bit of sacrifice, but it's not going to be something that's seriously taxing on your system. Additionally, okay, it's peaceful and drama free, okay? You're not going to be having these constant emotional battles with yourself, these big spikes of, you know, being super fired up and then like totally like, you know, defeated and, you know, beat up, and, you know, you're not going to be going back and forth inside your head all the time. It's just going to feel smooth. It's going to feel just, you know, good, okay? And maybe you've had this before in your life where it's like, shit, I just did something good. I completed this project, or I built this habit, and it was almost effortless, right? That's what we're going for with the natural progress. And when you practice natural progress, you really get incredible results over time, because, you know, this is something that compounds. It doesn't start crazy hard, but as you keep things up, you just keep going. You just keep taking that next right step. And over time, guess what? You've reached your goals. You've reached a new level in life. And this is what we all want, right? And so instead of trying to, you know, ride this emotional roller coaster or whatever of, you know, being insanely hyped with the frenzied stuff, or white knuckling through everything with, you know, the forced progress, we want to try and find that smooth, sustainable, reliable approach. And it's like, yeah, it's like, which one would you want? Obviously, this one here. You know, this is the natural progress. This is what's going to feel the best and it's going to work the best. But I'm curious from you guys, and if you could comment below, what do you struggle with? What do you find yourself getting hooked into? Do you find yourself struggling with forced progress more, or do you find yourself, you know, getting more caught into like the frenzied style approach? You know, let me know in the comments below, or maybe even alternate between the two. Thing we got to get into is, okay, great. Natural progress is the way to go. How the heck are we going to do it? Well, what we got to understand is that the issue is the relationship between your intellect and your emotions, okay? That's basically what determines what kind of progress and motivational system you are going to be accessing. It's how your prefrontal cortex interacts with the limbic system in your brain. You know, prefrontal cortex, that's like your intellect, your rational thinking. And then your limbic system, that's like the emotional part of you, the more mammalian animal part of you that holds all your emotions and really kind of controls your neurochemicals, okay? And it's the relationship between these two that really determines how it's going to feel when you try to make progress. So forced progress, you know, we see here, these guys are fighting against each other, all right? And it's the intellect and emotions fighting against each other, but the emotions, you know, they're just kind of more powerful when it comes down to it, right? Because our emotions, like I said, they control our motivational neurochemicals. And yeah, we can override our emotions, but it's very taxing to our system and it's difficult to do. And the more we squash our emotions down, typically the more they then, you know, jump up in moments of weakness and, you know, take us off the cliff, right? So this is why people who are constantly trying to force progress, they've got this like big pendulum swing experience where they're going up and down and up and down and up and down. And it, you know, makes you feel like you're going crazy because you're like, what the heck is going on inside of me, right? So we don't want our head and our heart fighting each other. And then with frenzied progress, it's kind of more just like our emotions just seriously hijack our brain. And maybe our brain's even somewhat along for the ride, but really what ends up happening is just eventually, you know, the emotions that are driving us, they dry up and you lose your steam and you just fall off that cliff and things don't really work out well. So what do we got to do? Well, we got to get down into the natural progress. With natural progress, the head and the heart, they are on the same page, all right? They are aligned. All right, and what I call this alignment is resonance. And that should be a term that's probably already familiar with a lot of you. It's used in common language, you know, regularly today. It's like, oh, does that resonate with you? And what that means is that there is this click. There is this, you can literally feel it. There's this click between your prefrontal cortex and your emotional center where, hey, I like this, you know, this feels good, right? And this is something that you can feel all the time. It's like when you go out to a restaurant or whatever, you look at all the options, and what you're doing is you're kind of calculating, all right, the price of the thing, you know, any kind of health goals you have, but then you're also factoring in that emotional desire for something tasty. And what you end up ordering is usually going to be that combination, that clicking point. You're like, ooh, I want this. And there's this click. That's resonance, okay? And the more resonant of a path that you can, you know, travel toward your goals, meaning that, you know, both these parts of your brain are on board, well, then you are going to start experiencing natural progress. Things are going to be easy because you're not fighting against anything, okay? So next question is, all right, well, cool. That sounds good. How am I going to generate this resonance? So let's talk about that. The first thing is that resonance is the intersection of what sounds right and feels right. So this requires a certain level of self-awareness, okay? Like most guys that I've met, particularly self-developmentally minded guys, they have a tendency to kind of just go with what sounds right. You know, like what is intellectually seems like the most optimal solution, okay? And it's like, oh, that's the smartest approach. I should do that. But if they don't check their emotions, well, then a lot of times they're going to pick a path that they're not going to follow through with because their emotions are like, meh. No, on the emotional level, it just goes clunk, right? Zero resonance. And so we have to learn how to expand our options and be able to find that path that kind of straddles that middle line between, you know, what sounds right and what feels right. Next thing is that there is a certain kind of relationship we need to build, and that relationship is the emotions, they must be the captain, and the intellect is the first mate. And this is completely contradictory to how I think most guys approach self-development. They want to have their emotions totally serve their intellectual ideals. But the problem is, like, the intellect, it can really only like crunch numbers. It's like an AI assistant, all right? It can run simulations, it's smart, and that kind of thing, but it doesn't tell you what you want. What you want comes from something deeper. It comes from, you know, your heart. It comes from like this deeper emotional center. So at the end of the day, we have to be moving from our emotional core. And I'm not talking about like our flitty little, you know, emotions at the surface. I'm talking about our deeper emotions, our deeper desires. These things need to be the captain. But, you know, this deeper emotional center, it lacks higher level reasoning, okay? It can't just call the shots by itself because, you know, you'll just end up eating junk food and jerking off all day, okay? So it needs the support of the intellect. And so the intellect's kind of like this hyper-intelligent first mate, right? It's kind of like this Captain Kirk and Spock scenario. You know, Captain Kirk's this charismatic, intuitive leader, but he would be dead a million times over if he didn't have the hyper-rational intellectual Spock constantly giving him advice, okay? And this is what we need. We need to be able to have our emotions be properly informed by our intellect. Because if we're thinking about things in true reality, we're running good mental simulations of what might happen, what are the cause and effect, what are the consequences of taking different paths, well then our emotions are going to be able to choose the best ones. But if we're not using our intellect to map that stuff out, well, then our emotions are going to be kind of working with lower resolution information and making bad decisions. And the final piece here is that there needs to be constant internal communication and recalibration. All right. And so what does this mean? Well, this isn't a set and forget sort of system. All right, there needs to be a constant relationship. These parts need to be constantly interacting with each other. All right, it's like you pick a plan, feels resonant at first, and then you do it for a little while, and then you notice, my emotions are kind of losing steam with this. They don't really like this. And it's like at that point, you need to recalibrate. It's like, well, what do I want different? I need to key into that emotion and define it. And then work with the intellect to figure out a way that you can still make forward progress. Or maybe you're making progress on a path, you know, building some habit or whatever, and you realize, all right, the strategy we're employing here, it's just not working. You know, it feels all right, but we're not getting the results we want. All right, intellect, get to work and tell us what are our options, how can we make this thing better? And so this constant iteration, flexibility, and self-conversation is really a huge key. Now, I really just kind of scratched the surface on these topics. There's a lot to them. So if you would like a more in-depth understanding of this stuff, I've got a brand new free lesson that you can access by clicking the link in the description or in my bio, depending upon what platform you're viewing this on. And I really recommend that you check it out, because in it, I'll show you how to break out of autopilot and take control of your life using an incredibly powerful pattern interrupt method. All right. And further, I'll teach you how to slay what I'm calling the dopamine dragon. That's the little monster in your head that's hungry for that cheap pleasure of porn, video games, Netflix, etc. And it's keeping you hooked on just this low value crap that's blocking you from your goals. Okay. So definitely check out that free lesson by clicking the link. And I know you're going to get a ton out of it. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. All right. I'll see you guys all on the front line. Ooh, yeah.